Hello and welcome to our channel. Today we're sharing the story of a man who plotted his revenge against his unfaithful wife for over 2 decades. My name is Matt and I am 56 years old. As of today, I am single, a status I've maintained for the last 20 years following my divorce. This divorce profoundly shaped my life, leading up to the day when I finally enacted my revenge on my ex-wife and her lover. To provide some context, let's go back to the beginning. I met Lisa at a party thrown by a mutual friend. She was standing alone in a corner and I decided to approach her. It took a bit of time, but eventually she engaged in conversation and we ended up having a wonderful night together. By the evening's end, we exchanged numbers and agreed to meet again. A week later, we went on our first date, and it wasn't long before we began dating regularly. After about a month, our relationship became intimate. At that time, I was working as a software developer at a local IT firm, and Lisa was employed at a nearby advertising agency. We often went out to the movies every week. Lisa was an avid hiker, which motivated me to get in better shape. Every moment with her was precious to me. After dating for around 3 years, we decided to get married, much to the delight of my family. However, my father-in-law Donald was not particularly pleased with our union. As a wealthy and well-connected man, he had hoped his daughter would marry someone of similar financial stature. I often found myself at odds with him. He would constantly compare me to other men he deemed more suitable for his daughter. In response, I occasionally retorted, suggesting that if I were as wealthy as him, I would be both humble and more intelligent. My mother-in-law, Linda, although less vocal, seemed to share her husband's views. I tried to maintain a distance from Lisa's parents as much as possible. Despite the tension between me and her parents, Lisa always stood by me, a support I deeply appreciated. Determined to prove my worth, I poured myself into my career, working extra hours and gradually increasing my earnings. A year later, we were blessed with a beautiful daughter, Cindy, which brought immense joy into my life. Despite their earlier reservations, my in-laws showered Cindy with gifts and continued to financially support Lisa. I later discovered that Lisa had been receiving regular financial assistance from her parents, a revelation that caused some friction between us. However, I chose not to pursue the matter further, considering Lisa was the sole heir to her parents' assets. But fortunes can change swiftly, and they did for Lisa's family. In a shocking turn of events, a stock market crash devastated Donald's finances. Within a year, his business collapsed, forcing them to sell their house and other assets and downsize to a smaller apartment. During this tumultuous period, I saw a change in Donald. He seemed humbler in our few encounters, perhaps broken by his losses. Linda, too, began to engage more with me. Despite their plight, I refrained from gloating or exacerbating their situation. Meanwhile, my relationship with Lisa began to strain. She grew increasingly distant, often lashing out without reason. Our intimate life also suffered, fading into non-existence. Just days before Cindy's 3rd birthday, the situation took a turn, with Donald. Tragically, Donald and Linda were both killed in a car accident, leaving Lisa devastated. We had to call off Cindy's birthday celebration due to the tragedy. Following this, Lisa became even more withdrawn from me, spending considerable time away from home. This left me juggling my job and caring for our daughter, Cindy. During this period, I had been capturing video footage of Cindy's childhood, documenting her daily life and milestones, often when Lisa was out at parties. I had several conversations with Lisa about her increasing absences and her changing behavior. I even suggested therapy to help us work through our issues, but to no avail. Her behavior worsened. She often returned home drunk, and I began to suspect infidelity. There were times when she arrived inebriated, and I had to help her to our bedroom. On one such occasion, discovering Lisa wasn't wearing her underwear one evening, an item I clearly remembered seeing her in that morning, infuriated me. Overwhelmed, I left her on the floor and sought advice from a friend the next day. He recommended hiring a private investigator, which I promptly did. After 2 months, the investigator presented me with a plethora of evidence: photos, videos, and call recordings. It was undeniable. Lisa was having an affair with Gordon, a wealthy man and the son of one of Donald's friends, who also happened to be a childhood friend of Lisa's. This revelation shattered me. When I returned home, intent on confronting Lisa with the evidence, I was blindsided. While playing and recording a moment with my daughter, Lisa arrived unexpectedly with a lawyer and served me divorce papers. She declared her intention to take full custody of our daughter and a significant portion of my assets. Determined not to back down easily, I contested the divorce. It was a grueling battle, and though I managed to keep my house, I heartbreakingly lost custody of my daughter. In court, I succeeded in proving Lisa's infidelity. 20 years had passed since Lisa took my daughter and left town, moving in with Gordon. In that time, I transformed myself into a different person. I steered clear of relationships and poured all my energy into my career. Through hard work and smart investments, I amassed a substantial fortune. I never looked back, nor did I attempt to reach out to Lisa or my daughter. A few months ago, however, I made the decision to reconnect with my daughter. After 2 weeks of searching, I finally located her and reached out through social media, introducing myself as her father and expressing my desire to meet her. Although she was initially hesitant, she agreed to meet me. 2 days later, I found myself face to face with my daughter, Cindy, and her fiancé, Gary. Cindy's initial reaction was one of fury. She unleashed a torrent of insults, accusing me of betraying her mother and abandoning them. I was prepared for this. I listened quietly as she vented her anger. Cindy showed no interest in spending more time with me, but Gary, who appeared to be quite sensible, encouraged her to hear me out. I spoke little, but my actions were deliberate. I pulled out a file, the divorce file from the court's ruling, and handed it to Gary. This file contained the truth about the past, a truth I hoped would shed light on the circumstances that led to our family's dissolution. To my astonishment, Gary turned out to be a lawyer. He attentively read through the documents I had handed him, and after understanding the contents, he offered me an apology. Cindy, visibly puzzled, questioned why Gary was apologizing to me. In response, Gary meticulously explained the details of the case to her. As the truth unfolded, Cindy fell silent, absorbing the revelations. I then opened my laptop and began playing videos I had recorded 20 years ago. These were precious moments of Cindy's childhood that I had captured. Watching these videos, Cindy's emotions overflowed and tears streamed down her face. Overcome with emotion, she stood up, embraced me, and admitted that Lisa had deceived her all these years. Breaking a 2-decade silence, I finally spoke directly to my daughter. "I missed you, Princess." Her response was a flood of tears. I invited them to my hotel room, eager to learn more about their lives. Once settled, Cindy opened up about her current life. She revealed that Lisa and Gordon were still not married, but simply cohabiting. According to Cindy, Gordon was a despicable man who had never treated her properly, even resorting to physical violence at times. Although Lisa would sometimes object, she never dared to defy him, as she was too entangled in the lavish lifestyle his wealth provided. Cindy continued, sharing that she had moved out of Lisa and Gordon's house as soon as she turned 18 and had been living independently ever since. She then recounted how she met Gary, their blossoming romance, and their plans to marry soon. She mentioned that Gary hailed from a small town, painting a picture of his humble origins and the life they were planning together. Observing Gary, I couldn't help but see a reflection of my younger self in him, coming from a modest background. I offered to help with their wedding arrangements. Gary initially hesitated, insisting they could manage on their own, but I gently persuaded him, expressing my desire to be involved as I had no one else in my life except my daughter, and by extension, now Gary. They eventually agreed, and after they left, Cindy called me later that night asking to meet. I was pleasantly surprised and agreed. Cindy and Gary came over, and we had an extensive discussion about the wedding plans. The date was set for 7 weeks from then, and the preparations began in earnest. When Lisa heard about the wedding, she was overjoyed, particularly excited about the venue. She had been informed and was also invited, along with Gordon. At this point, no one knew I was involved or even in town. The next day, Cindy came to see me and mentioned how Lisa was boasting to her friends about arranging the venue and that Gordon would be walking her down the aisle. I couldn't help but smile at the irony. Finally, the wedding day arrived. I reached the venue early and sat quietly in a corner, watching as guests began to arrive. Lisa and Gordon entered, looking every bit the perfect couple, their expressions revealing surprise at the lavish arrangements. Why are you surprised if you paid for it? I thought to myself. As the ceremony began, Cindy entered, looking radiant with her bridesmaids. Gordon confidently stepped forward to offer his arm to Cindy, assuming his role in walking her down the aisle. But as he approached, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Surprised, he turned to find a security guard instructing him to step aside. Gordon protested, claiming his right as a father figure, but Cindy firmly told him to return to his seat. Gordon's anger flared, and he raised his hand, possibly to strike Cindy. That's when he felt his wrist seized by someone. He turned to see me, warning him that any violent action would be a grave mistake. I suggested he walk away for the best, and the tension in the air was palpable. Gordon, visibly shocked at my presence, hesitated for a moment before stepping aside. I extended my arm to Cindy, and together we walked down the aisle towards Gary. Lisa's expression was one of utter shock upon seeing me there. The wedding proceeded beautifully, and Gary and Cindy were officially married. As it was time for the family photographs, Gordon and Lisa attempted to join in, but they were promptly stopped by security, who had been instructed not to allow them in the family pictures. This caused both Lisa and Gordon to become furious, leading to a loud, disruptive scene. With a simple gesture from me, they were escorted out of the venue. The next day, the local newspaper featured an article on the second page about the grand wedding. However, the article delved into more than just the event's splendor. It highlighted the bride's family background, detailing how her mother had cheated on her father and was now living with an abusive man who had mistreated Cindy since her childhood. The author of this revealing article was none other than Cindy herself. A day after the wedding, I left the town, coinciding with Cindy and Gary departing for their honeymoon. Shortly thereafter, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Lisa, in tears, telling me that Gordon had become violent towards her after reading the article, which had resulted in him losing clients and suppliers, plunging him nearly into ruin. He was blaming Lisa for everything. Through her sobs and apologies, she pleaded for my help. I listened to her cries and apologies for exactly 7 minutes and 35 seconds before I found myself disinterested and hung up. That was the last I heard from her. I remain single to this day, with no intentions of changing that status. And to our dear listeners, if you've followed this story to its conclusion, I encourage you to click the subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated.